Hey guys, Sleepyhound Piper here with another reading. This time, Nyarlathotep by H.P Lovecraft. I hope you enjoy. Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos. I am the last, and I will tell the adwent void. I do not recall distinctly when it began, but it was months ago. The general tension was horrible, to a season of political and social upheaval which added strange and brooding apprehensions of hideous physical danger. A danger widespread and all-embracing. Such a danger as may be imagined only in the most terrible phantasms of the night. I recall that the people went about the pale and worried faces, and whispered warnings and prophecies which no one dared consciously repeat or acknowledge to himself that he had heard. A sense of monstrous guilt was upon the land, and out of the abysses between the stars swept chill currents that made men shiver in the dark and lonely places. There was a daemonic alteration in the sequence of the seasons. The autumn heat lingered fearsomely, and everyone felt that the world, perhaps the universe, had passed from the known control of gods or forces to that of gods or forces which were unknown. And it was then that Nyarlathotep came out of Egypt. Who he was, none could tell, but he was of the old native blood and looked like a pharaoh. The Falachen knelt when they saw him, yet could not say why. He said he had risen out of the blackness of the 27th centuries, and that he had heard messages from places not on this planet. Into the lands of the civilization came Nyarlathotep, swarthy, slender, and sinister, always buying strange instruments of glass and metal, and combining them into instruments yet stranger. He spoke much of the sciences, of electricity and psychology, and gave exhibitions of power which sent his spectators away speechless, yet which swelled his fame to exceeding multitude. Men advised one another to see Nyarlathotep, and shuddered. And where Nyarlathotep went, vanished rest. For the small hours were rent with screams of nightmare. Never before had the screams of nightmare been such a public problem. Now the wise men almost wished they could forbid sleep in the small hours, that the shrieks of the city might less horribly disturb the pale, pitying moon as it gleamed on green waters, gliding under bridges, and old steeples crumbling on a sickly sky. I remembered when Nyarlathotep came to my city, the great, the old, the terrible city of unnumbered rhymes. My friend told me of him, and of the impaling fascination and allurement of his revelations, and I burned with eagerness to explore his utmost mysteries. My friend said that they were horrible and impressive beyond my most fevered imagines. That what was thrown on a screen in a darkened room prophesied things none but Nyarlathotep dared prophesy, and that in the shudder of his sparks there was taken from men that which had never been taken before, yet which skewed only in the eyes. And I heard it hint abroad that those who knew Nyarlathotep looked on sights which others saw not. It was in the hot autumn that I went through the night with the restless crowds to see Nyarlathotep. Through the stifling night and up the endless stairs into the choking room, and shadowed on the screen, I saw hooded forms amidst ruins, and a yellow, evil faces peering from behind fallen monuments. And I saw the world battling against darkness, against the waves of destruction from ultimate space, wheeling, churning, struggling across the dim, cooling sun. Then the sparks played amazingly around the heads of the spectators, and hair stood up on end whilst shadows more grotesque than I could tell came out and squatted on the heads. And when I, who was colder and more scientific than the rest, mumbled a terrifying protest about imposture and static electricity, Nyarlathotep drew us all out, down the dizzy stairs into the damp, hot, deserted midnight streets. I screamed aloud that I was not afraid, and that I could never be afraid, and others screamed with me for solace. We swore to one another that the city was exactly the same, and still alive, and when the electric lights began to fade, we cursed the company over and over again, and laughed at the queer faces we made. I believe we felt something coming down from the greenish moon, for when we began to depend on its light, we drifted into conscious involuntary formation and seemed to know our destinations, though we dared not think of them. Once we looked at the pavement and found the blocks loose and displaced by grass, with scarce a line of rusted metal to skew where the tram lines had run. And again we saw a tram car, lone, windowless, dilapidated, and almost on its side. When we gazed around the horizon, we could not find the third tower by the river, and noticed that the silhouette of the second tower was ragged at the top. When we split up into narrow columns, each of which seemed drawn into a different direction, one disappeared into a narrow alley to the left, leaving only the echo of a shocking moan. Another filled down a weed-choked subway entrance, howling with a laughter that was mad. My own column was sucked towards the open country. Presently felt chill which was not of the hot autumn. For as we stalked out on the dark moor, we beheld around us the hellish moon glitter of evil snows, trackless, inexplainable snows, swept asunder in one direction only, where lay a gulf of all the blacker for its glittering walls. The column seemed very thin indeed as it prodded dreamily into the gulf. I lingered behind. The black rift in the green-looking snow was frightful, and I thought I had heard reverberations of a disquieting wail as my companions vanished. But my power to linger was slight. As if beckoned by those who had gone before, I half floated between titanic snowdrifts, quivering and afraid to the sightless vortex of the unimaginable. Screaming, sentient, dumbly delirious, only by the gods that were can tell. A sickened, sensitive shadow, writhing in hands that were not hands, whirled blindly past ghastly midnights of rotted creation, corpses of dead worlds with sores that were cities, eternal winds that brushed the pallid stars and made them flicker low. Beyond the world's vague ghost of monstrous things, half-seen columns of unsanctified temples that rested on nameless rocks. Space reached up to Disney Bacca above, spheres of light and darkness. And through this revolting graveyard of the universe, the muffled, maddening beating of drums, a thin, melodious whine of blasphemous flutes, from an inconceivable, unlighted chambers beyond time. The detestable pounding and piping, whereunto danced slowly, awkwardly, and abruptly, the gigantic, unanimous, ultimate gods, blind, voiceless, mindless gargoyle, whose soul is Nyarlathotep. Alright, so that was Nyarlathotep. I hope you enjoy it. I hope Eldritch December has been going well for you guys. And we will see you in the next one. All right. Goodbye.